My freaking face is really, really itchy. Uh, excuse me. Sorry, I wanted to talk a little bit more about um the things that I've seen and the things that I'm seeing, and what is now about to shift and take place. I think I talked about it before, but I just want to have a little bit more emphasis on what is going on and what I see and what I know what God was preparing me for years before, as far as mental, not physical, but now it's physical because you see what's going on. And a lot of people have been talking about it. My mom has been talking about it for years. And I will say this, people talk about people with mental illness and things like that. And sometimes they don't understand that sometimes when people are labeled as mentally ill, everyone who is labeled as mentally ill is not mentally ill. Some people who are labeled as mentally ill are literally mentally ill, but they have very smart, they have special, I won't say special abilities, but sometimes they can see things that other people may not see because they look at things through a different lens. We have our own lenses. I mean, our eyes, our nose. These are our window gates, our gates to the world, how we interpret the world. And somehow, well, we based the standard judgment, what most people, how they process things as the standard, and not looking at things as a whole. But I have learned to not always look at the standard or what was supposedly popular or was supposedly acceptable. Um, okay, so today uh, it was on my mind to talk about food shortages and how, you know, God had been telling me about this and talking to me about this. And not only that, my mother uh, has been talking about it for a quite a bit of time and how things were and how it's going to make it illusion. Um, excuse me. One thing that I noticed, even dealing with the media and being in that arena for a minute, is that um, and honestly, I kind of don't want to go back because you see what it is, and it's like sometimes you feel like, okay, well, maybe I can make a better situation of it, but at this point, you know that you cannot. And I don't give a care what facet they're doing. Some people, I'm not saying that all people in the media is bad or anything like that. What I'm saying is this: when the mainstream or the public is talking about one thing and they're bringing up something, is usually in past tense. It means it has already occurred. The chain, the big thing has already occurred. It's just going to have a ripple effect. Uh, think about it. Excuse me. Think about it. And when you guys were, some of you guys have been on this earth longer than I have, and you've seen the protesting and the marches when Martin Luther King was, around in those civil rights era. Think about when they first started talking about that and making it mainstream. By the time they started talking about it, they had already had protesting and things like that years before, and successful ones years before. Another example of this is, um, think about a hit song. Usually, when you hear a hit song, no matter what age group you're in, when the mainstream, when the radio talked about it, or the big outlets talked about it, it's usually on a higher scale, and it's after the fact it has become this huge hit. and usually after that, um, people disregard it. So that's the same thing that we're dealing with today. Anytime you see something that is mainstream, and don't take my word for it, I just want you to look at things, anytime the mainstream media talks about something that is happening right then, that means it is past tense. It has already happened. Think about when they started talking about the pandemic. Now that it's a pandemic, I would think that it would probably be an epidemic, but because it is worldwide, but they're still considering it and calling it a pandemic. So that's kind of weird too. So because it's an epidemic, because it's all around the world. Pandemic is just, um, is it pandemic? Am I messing it up? Let me look it up before I go and start tripping. But let's see. Sorry, you guys. I just want to be right before I get. Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. I messed that up. Okay. So we're saying it right. But it was at first an epidemic. And by then it was already a pandemic. That's what it is. Because an epidemic is just over the whole scale. With just one country. But when we started talking about it, I mean, the people in the States and in the bigger countries, we started talking about it in March for the most part. Uh, I remember at the job that I was working at and I currently work at, we had people come from the CDC, and they came to our city, and they had, the officials, the medical officials that were top in their field and things like that. And I was really, and how I got into this, because I'm not at the top of my field, but this is how God works. Sometimes He lets His people to see. I went there because my boss and my boss and my boss, my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss, they could not go to this meeting. I don't know how it happened, but I was literally forced to go to this meeting. So, and I had to report and to tell everything. So as I'm going in there, I'm thinking it's just a regular conference and a dinner. No, they started bringing out spreadsheets, and they're telling everything that is going to happen. They even talk about how we're going to have a three-wave episode, how things are going to get shut down, the expectancy of the people adhering to what's going on, the reluctancy of people, the adherence to people, that some people are going to, go in, and how things are going to have a domino effect. They even break it down. Now, my thing is not with dealing with health as far as physical minds, it's emotional and spiritual. So, because I'm into social work, um, but they talk about how this is going to trickle down, how this is going to impact each and every one of our aspects in our career field. Um, and we're like, what is going on? Blah blah this, And this was like I want to say the first one is in November. It was in November. Then they came back and they told us this was going to happen around February. Blah blah this. The next time it came back, they came back in February and they told us about how the second. They didn't talk about how the first time was going to happen because they already illustrated and brought it down and broke it down into phases. Like boom, boom. This is the expected. And when I say, I wish I could have kept those papers, because when I say how what was expected came to pass, just like boom, 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 it went exactly like that. So that's why I was kind of adamant with who I told. I told my family. I definitely told my family. Okay, and everyone that I knew that was, um, that I knew that would listen. Not only that, people who would not listen, I still told. Some people thought I was nuts until it really happened. And then at that time, it was like God had put it in my spirit before it even happened, before we even had, the meetings and the conferences and the proofs in the paper. But when I got it from work, sorry you guys, my leg is itching. I freaking cut my leg. But when it happened, oh, it's so bad. Okay, let me stop scratching that scab. When it happened, and I saw the proof in the pudding, which was those papers, that I had validation. Even though I could not show those papers, I was able to talk about it. It gave me more confidence to talk about it and what was going on and how, you need to prepare. Um, and some people did, and a lot of people didn't. But when this happened, it took them for a loop. It took the people who didn't. Shoot, excuse me, who didn't go after that. Excuse me, for a loop, meaning that yeah, that's exactly what it did. So now they're talking about and then after that, now you can see, oh yeah, sorry, once it started getting really big, you started seeing the news talking about what they anticipated um to happen. I don't know why my nose is getting clogged up, but I'm finishing this because it seems like every time I talk about stuff like this, I can't finish, or something is happening, or even when I'm at work and I'm explaining something or I'm doing something to help other people, it's something happening with me. That's trying to stop me, but I'm not gonna stop. Anywho, these people are partying, not even looking around. Um, so after that, you started seeing the news outlets talking about it. Our president at the time was like, "Oh, this isn't, big," which I think that's all a game too, to get people calmed and not to get people complacent and things like that. Um, but when they started talking about it, it was already done. We had already had, cases worldwide. That was before they were saying it was a pandemic. They were saying it was an epidemic then, when it was already a pandemic. So my thought and what I'm bringing today is that don't look don't look at mainstream when to tell you that a food shortage or something else is coming. Whenever they start talking about that, just know that it is too late. Do not wait until it is too late to get your salvation right. Because I don't want people to say, oh, yeah, you're looking for physical food. Because we know as believers, now, if you're not a believer, that's on you. I pray that God, covers you and you seek his face and he protects you, because this is spiritual. This is not, even though we're seeing it in the physical, but we know people who are believers and non believers, if they're spiritual, they believe in other spirits. They know that things start in the realm of the spirit before it goes into this physical third dimension. Um, don't wait. Do not wait. It is better to be prepared than unprepared. It is better to be prepared than unprepared. Think about the person. If you go into an interview, if you know how the company and what the company structure is and how what they're looking for, it is better. You will have a better chance at getting the job and looking the part than going there head first and not knowing, trying to wing it and not knowing what to look for, what the company is looking for. So that's the same thing that you want to deal with every aspect of your life, especially with this food shortage. Um, People in America, sometimes we are going to have to cut back on some things. Cut back on the sugar intake that you are having now. Does not mean that you need to get rid of sugar in your house. I will never tell anybody to get rid of all the sugar in your house, okay? Sugar, salt, flour, those things have importance, Even though we have these intolerances and things that don't work out, they have their devices and they have their means to help you in times. Sugar is a good preservative. It helps you with sustainability. If you are going through suffering times, it can help you last. It'll curb your appetite and help you last longer. So you want to stock up on those things. Like I said in my other video, there were things that God was showing me, because I'm so grateful that God had me to go to this job. And I was like, why am I working at this job when I just got an offer to do this big gig? And this way I know I can provide. But God provides. I forgot that quick that God provides. But because I took a job at a grocery store for a couple of days a week when this happened and people were racking the first time, and it's so crazy because I live in an area that we have multiple stores. I mean, when I say multiple stores, I live in a area that is it's called a city on a hill. It literally is called a city on the hill. It is called the Summit City, even though we have four major cities in the U.S. called the Summit. Revelation, y'all, 4 cities. So y'all look that up. And it's a city that is, even though it has a huge population, I want to say at least 40% of this land is owned by farmers, inherited farmers. It's a lot of land and a lot of people that farm. Even though we have a city kind of area. I live in a dense city area, which I'm trying to plan to relocate to with that, because if something was to happen, the first targets that people are going to get are the people that are in the cities. If you're close next to each other, a lot of people saw this a long time ago and started preparing and started getting home sheds and things like that, and moving out into the country where it takes you a minute to come and travel and to get back. And that way, I know it sounds crazy because you're away from people, but if something was to happen, you kind of want to be in that area or in that arena, because you're going to have less burglars and you're going to have less people. If something was to happen and things were to drop down, yes, you wouldn't have access to things because you're in a rural area and it's places where it's far out. However, if you stocked up and you've done everything, you have a better chance of survival than to be in a heavily dense population where over half of the people haven't stocked up and prepared. Now, if it was a situation where you're in a community where everyone has the same conscious mindset and they're all getting themselves ready and getting prepared, then that's something different. But when you don't, it's total chaos. That's why I said God was showing me in the previous video how to get rid of dead weight and people who are not looking at the times and looking at what is going on and things like that, and they're not being careful with the time that they have. Some people are thinking because they're still getting money, dollars in their pocket, that things are going to turn back to normal and things are going to be the same. That is the biggest lie from the pit of hell. Now, I'm not saying don't take that time to use what you have and to get the resources that you need to get where you need to go and to be the best for your family and the things like that. But I want to reiterate this: things are never going to be the same. It is best for you to brace and get prepared for the situation. I remember when I was a flight attendant that when people when we have accidents or things like that, and we think it might not even be near fatal, but we always prepare as if it was. We always prepared as if it was, because once again, it's better to be safe than to be sorry. It's better to have that extra step and that extra padding because it's going to help you in the long run versus doing something that won't. So, yeah, this is not the time to do frivolous spending, because there are a lot of people doing frivolous spending. This is not the time to go back and pick up old habits. This is actually the time to break habits. If you have addictions or things like that, this is the time to break it. If you are on certain medications that you can do without, because I will tell you this, when stuff hits the fan, when things get real, you're going to see where we don't have a security blanket. All we're seeing right now is shows, pomp and circumstances to get you comfortable, to get you, they got people focusing on election, focusing on these protesting. all that other stuff, does not matter. It's taking your time away from you from preparing for what is about to come. Okay, you want to be prepared for not just the now. The now is already here. What can you do to change and make a better outcome for what is about to come? And that is what you can prepare. It's just preparing. It's just preparing. Uh, get your things. Get your start canning. Start, God was showing me that canning, water bathing, getting your foods prepped. So when you do see it, you won't be like all shocked. And another thing is, don't get afraid and don't get bashful. I used to get bashful and nervous because when I was talking about this, people were thinking I was nuts and all that, and how God told me that He was gonna use me to help people and all that, and um, I used to get nervous and to get afraid, especially with the attacks that was going on. Because when you are in tune and you're focused on what is really happening and not the facade of life, um, people come after you. People come after you, because you know what it is. Um, but I will tell you this: with God, I got stronger. With God, I got stronger during this process, and I outlived it because you see me today talking about it. Um, and that gives me all the more courage because I know God is with me. All the more courage and the discipline to tell you what is up and what it is. Um, Please, people, stock up on rice. Stock up on things that can do dual processing, that can give you dual things. Rice. People talk about white rice. Oh, white rice. I used to be one of those people, y'all, because I love white rice, especially sticky rice. I'm Haitian and I'm black. Black people love rice. Latin people love rice. Haitians love rice. Asian people love rice. Is rice. Okay, people like, oh yeah, it's got a lot of it gets you fat, it gets you sticky, blah blah this. You should eat brown rice, you should eat cauliflower rice. Well, I'll tell you this. I do eat cauliflower rice. I do eat brown rice, but in a situation that we're going to have, what lasts longer is white rice. What lasts longer is the flour, that all purpose, white flour that people talk about, that has got all the germs and stuff out of it. You want to keep the healthy ones. Yes, I use that stuff right now. But to preserve, that's what you need. Another thing, I tried to keep up with dough, but having a lot of dough on hand and trying to dry it, um it just takes up a lot of time and a lot of weight. So it's kind of better for you to have that dry. And not only that, excuse me, you can make so many uses for it. So, um, yeah, but you guys need to stock up. Stock up. Stock up because they're already saying it's a meat shortage. Even though you're seeing meat, still, a lot of people are seeing no meat already. But there are a lot of people, especially in my area, are seeing a huge portion of meat. They're constantly have been giving away meat in my area, because of that. And the reason because of this is like, okay, if it's a meat shortage, why do we have a surplus of meat? Um, for one, this shortage is man made. So, because we live on a farm area, a lot of our farmers have been forced to kill their livestock, because of what has have been happening with the virus, that they have to kill their livestock and either sell it off or throw the meat away. So they have to either give it out, kill it, throw away, things like that. So you're losing. So now, not only that, they're losing out on livestock. Losing out on livestock, which is actually their money, their way of livelihood. Their land is becoming very field and very void because the animals actually take care of the land. If you got cows grazing on your land and you got chickens, doing all this other stuff, and cows and horses that are grazing off of the land, it helps with keeping the land up. It's giving them food, but it helps you keep your land up. and it's helping pay for your homestead and things like that. So this is where we're going to see how we're seeing the ripple down effect. You might not be seeing it now. Um, you just see it. You might not be seeing the big thing. Now, some of those people in those cities, the city that I used to live in, they're seeing the meat shortages now. They're seeing some of it now because the prices of meat are getting higher. That's when you know when you're getting closer to the end of the rope. See, it takes more time to bring that food from the rural place to go into the big cities where they're spending the money because they need that meat. They don't have any livestock to make the food, or to have that meat. So it's more expensive in that area versus being a little bit cheaper for us to get it, but they have to still kill it, and get rid of it. So now we're having an influx of it. And another thing, if you have people and family that are in the city or in different cities and you can help with that and transport that, that would be good. Um, Most of us, like me, can't do that. But if you do have those resources, definitely try that out. What else? Land. Because of that, the prices for everything is going to go up too. Um, the the one thing that I saw that was going up as far as food was sugar. In the area that I'm in, there is a lot of people. They do more gluten free things. They have more healthy alternatives. Well, when this first happened, people were taking everything off the shelves. When I say it was things getting off the shelf, things were going off the shelf. And we didn't have a lot of flour. Not only that, we didn't have a lot of honey either. So when they did get stocked back up, our sugar went from, like, I think it was like $1.08 a pound or something like that, which is really good. I know people like $1.08 for a pound. It was like about a 5 pound for $1.08, um, to like almost $4 now. And like I said, once again, I live in an area. Even though this is a city, um, about 40% of the land is farmland. They're doing a lot of rebuilding, a lot of construction, but once again, about 40% of this land in the city is farmland, and it's held up by that. It's held up by that because if you're not dealing with food, you can take that money and you can use it for other things. um Let me put this phone. Sorry, you guys, I had to stop. And okay, I had to put my work phone away, y'all. Sometimes it records, which I don't care. But it just weirds me out having it close to mine and what I'm talking about. Um, oh yeah, so I was talking about sugar. So the price went up, and it's just crazy. Rice, I say rice. Rice is still kind of down. It went up like about, I think, 14 cents, but that's still kind of good, because you still got an opportunity to go and do it and go get it. But yeah, try to get things, try to get prepared. Basically, get what you like to eat, but you also want to be responsible and understand this, because a lot of people don't want to say that they're not looking at it long term. They're looking like, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, 4 to 5 or 6 weeks. But you need to be looking at this long term, because if this is having a ripple effect and it's going to be over, it has to go in stages. Just like I said, there are going to be some areas that are going to be facing it already, and as well as other places that have not seen it, but eventually everyone will see the shortage. Everyone will see the shortage. And that's when you're going to start seeing the media trying to talk about it. But by then, it is going to be too late. Um, so, um, yeah, be prepared. Get you some things. Rice is always good. Sugar is always good. I don't care what nobody say. Sugar, salt. You need salt. I get salt with iodine. You know those little cheap things, those things of salt that has iodine in it. Even though some of that stuff doesn't even have real iodine in it, it's still because or not a strong amount of it. It is still good to have that. You guys want to have that. You want to talk about long term. You're not talking about just putting the best nutrients in. If you can do that and you can find places or those nutrient bars, people don't think about those. Anything, if you're a camper, if you've been in the military, things like that, you know that you need to have things that gives you the most nutrients that has a longer shelf life. Those freaking macro bars. Oh, I love those macro bars. People don't like those sometimes because they taste kind of chalky or things like that. But they have a lot of nutrients. They will give you a day's worth of nutrients. This is what you want to do. This is what you want to have. Water. People take water for granted, especially in the U.S. You know, I remember when I was in Haiti and living in Haiti. You kind of take water for granted too because you got rivers, you got canals, you got creeks. But drinking water, I've seen shortages in drinking water before. Um, and when you get, people talk about how grumpy people are going to get without food, think about water. Think about water. Your body can last 3 days without water. And think about the people who don't get the proper amount or this proper dosage of water. Think about the people who do get the dosage or barely get the dosage of water, and they are around a lot of electronics or things that drain water from them. They're already deficient on water, and they are around things that are drying them up. If there was something like that to happen and you don't have the right amount, you're gone. Think about the people who need excess amount of water for medical reasons, and think about it like that. You want to think about every resource and everything that you're gonna need, medications, things of that nature. People with psychotic medication, you know, people who have, and then when I say psychotic, I mean even if it's addiction medicine, something that has helps you with chemical imbalance in the brain. You um, you want to look for things like that. Um, also, start a garden. I remember during the Obama administration, people talk a lot about that administration. I did too because that was when the time when I had the most issues and I could not get health insurance, because I was out of the cusp. I used to be living in like a upper class, you know, middle upper class, and when that happened, I lost a lot of things. Not only that, being a business owner, going through a horrible relationship, and divide it financially left me destitute, and because of that, I was in between the middle of the cusp of the provisions of Obamacare, and because of that, I lost a lot of health benefits. I literally had to be without health insurance from our government. But one thing that they did talk about that I did like, because I didn't like anything else that they talked about, anything else that they did. I don't know, people gonna come for me, but I don't really care, because I'm not really into the whole politics. I go for the right person and what I think is gonna be best for the community as a whole. One thing that I did like that they talked about, and every presidential cabinet has certain pinpoints. So you shouldn't look at, and I don't care what government that you are in, if it's dealing with something with democracy and not communism, or one size parliament that is just people are there forever, and it's a totalitarian government. If you're not living in those kind of areas, in those, or aristocrat or something like that, and you're living in a democracy area, this is the blessing, because it's people that can get shipped in and shipped out. So it's not just one type of government. By that, When I say that, it's also, you have to also understand what a democracy is. You get to, they have, where it looks like it's a choice, but you have to look underlying in the things, that the pinpoints and the goals and the objectives that they have, long term. That's how you are supposed to vote, based off of that, not based off of parties, based off of the goals that they have set in stone, that is already in effect. And you look at the candidates and look at their views on it and their stance on it and what their main focus is, and that's how you're supposed to, and what direction you want to see the policies to go into, and what you, not only what you want to see, but what is realistic and what can really happen, and who's going to be the best candidate for it. Not dealing with sides or anything like that. But one thing I noticed, and one thing that I understood, that I really liked, was that in the Obama administration, the one thing they talked about was sustainability, and how they talked about how they were giving coverage to people who were growing their own things. They were doing things like that. Now, what you didn't see, this, I'm going to talk about the ripple effect with that too. What you didn't see is that some of those contracts, those same things that you're dealing with farmers, some of their livelihood and some of their stuff was getting taken away in that process too. Some people didn't even understand that some of the places that used to be considered rural areas, where they were agricultural and not just residential, because there's a difference from agricultural resident areas in residential areas. So if you're going, like, say for instance, you're buying a homestead, or you're buying a place and you want to live in there, and you start to grow and it's not an agricultural place, you can get fined for that. They have rules for that. Versus some place where you want to grow and start a business and it's an agricultural land, you can get fined for that. So but some of those things started to shift and change. But like I said, one of those things that I really, really enjoyed, and what I really understood and I really liked, is that they talk about food sustainability, and how to grow things in your own backyard, and how to grow things whether you lived in a compound, or a compound, meaning, when I say compound, people who don't live in the states know what a compound is. Just like an apartment or an estate or a place that is residential, where you don't have farmland. Some places, some compounds do have, certain places and certain blocks off like that. In the city that I live in now, they have like senior citizen housings, but they have places where they can plant their gardens in a certain lot. And that's what they're trying to change to everywhere now. Is it a good thing? Yes, because you can get out of your backyard. But is it hurting? It's hurting the farmers and the people that are actually trying to make a living in it. But if something was to happen, which we're going to face, you have it. You have the access and the resources there. So yeah. What else did I need to talk about? I think I talked about everything. I talked about canning, and the importance of canning. Um, I just started canning. It has not been long, but I will tell you this: I have had so many benefits from it, because it saves me money. Not just because of, if things were to happen, yes, would I be okay and covered? Yes. Would I be able to share with some people? Yes. Um, but it has saved me money, to put money, and put that money towards something else that is more productive and more helping and more sufficient for me to be able to provide for myself and family later on. So if you haven't tried it, definitely look for it. And when I say can as much as possible, because then you got the most nutrients. You got things that are fresh, and you're preserving it. And if something was to happen where you couldn't get access to certain things, you're still going to be okay. If you didn't have, electricity was out or something like that, and you still needed to eat, you can still do that. You can still do that. And still have good food. You really can have good food. And it's already prepared. Um, Oh, what else is? Don't knock. People always, when they get into this healthy, they think about, you want to eat things that are good for you. You want to, that are healthy and good, but you also want to be realistic. What if you don't have the resources to can? What if you don't understand it a lot? How do you start? Start with canned goods. Start with canned goods. Start with dry beans. Start with what you have. Start with what you have, and grow from there. Um, what else? The one thing that has been helping me the most is working for a grocery store. And I only work there for a couple of hours. It's not even for a whole day, y'all, but it is a blessing in disguise. And because for one, I get first dibs on things, and secondly, um, in order to get things in order and to have, I don't want to put all my business out because some people be looking for that. Um, and if you had a situation like this, um, the first thing people try to do, especially people who haven't prepared, they try to go for the people who are prepared. Which I've been prepared for that too. But yeah, so you guys be careful when you go on social media and you post things and stuff like that, because there are some people who are unprepared. There are some people who don't do their due diligence. There are some people, just like in the Bible, they talked about, the 10 virgins, five had their oil and their lamp, and they were waiting on God, and the other one where they were foolish, they were virgins, they were doing right, but they were not prepared. And when God came, they had enough light to be able to see and to go into the door. And the people who were foolish were saying, give me some oil so I can light my lamp. And they only had just enough for themselves because they waited so long. You never know how long you might have to wait things out. So, and you have to be careful for what you put on there, because some people know that you are prepared and they want to hunker down and they want to get in your good graces and to be around you. Just for that, I've had people who are like that, and everybody has that in their life. You have to be disciplined, and you have to be good with saying no, and hell no, and being okay with that. Because you can um, hurt yourself. And I'm not saying being selfish and stingy or anything like that, and not sharing with you. I'm not saying that. And for people who aren't going to get messages like this, because there are going to be some people that are still left in the dark, and or they never had the resources to do that. There are some people that are like that, believe it or not, believe it, or not, because there are some people who think because they live in a land of luxury, meaning, and I'm not saying a land of luxury, I mean a land where it's plenty of food and plenty of resources, that no one else is struggling in their country or in their city. And that's wrong. That's not true. In the city that I live in, there are people that are living in the inner cities that, even though we have a lot of farmland and things like that, they don't have food. They don't get the resources that they need, and they need the resources the most. And some of the people who have plenty resources that are overflowing, so I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is it's better to prepare, and God knows what He gives you. This is why I'm saying this. If you have the opportunity and the chance to do this, you're not just doing this just for yourself. You're doing this to help others too. There are going to be some people who really had a kind heart, who really didn't have it, to do or to give. But like I said, it's better to be prepared than not to be. So, if you have the time, use that time. It can be 15 minutes a day. Start putting things away. Start organizing. Start getting things intact. I have to do that for myself right now, because when you get stuff, you just start putting away and you don't really separate it and get it organized. And God has been telling me, like, now it's time to get stuff, back in line, back in order, back together. So, um, yeah, do that. Um, I'm gonna get off of here because it's already 45 minutes. So, hopefully, you guys get something out of it. The food shortage thing is not a lie. It's going to happen, and it's not going to be, just a couple of weeks or just half the year. because that's going to be very detrimental, but it's going to be so intense. If it's for a whole 6 months, at least, I'm going to say at least 6 months, and you haven't prepared at all, or you prepared and you haven't disciplined yourself, you're going to go through your rations too quick. You're going to go through your rations too quick. So it's not just having food, it's being mentally prepared and mentally able to understand that you are going to have to discipline yourself. You are going to have to uh, discipline. Yeah, discipline yourself. You have to prepare yourself and discipline yourself. So, uh, and if you don't, you can end up in the same situation as the people who are not, right. And also, I will tell you this: man does not live off of bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. You have to get your spiritual life together. Thank you, Lord God. Let me tell you, because you're gonna see stuff. You're gonna see stuff, and you're gonna start seeing some of the things. Some of you guys are gonna be grateful because you've been through the struggle. I think about the people who know what they're doing, but they're partying outside. So I think about the people who went through the depression, who are still living to this day. I had a neighbor because he just moved, but he was talking about it, and he said that he started preparing in 2008 because of the signs that he saw when he was a kid of how this happens, and how a lot of people weren't ready and prepared because they were thinking that things were going to go back the same way it did, and it never did. And he was telling me how his family, stayed alive, and not only that, they were able to prosper into a time when it was a great struggle. You are going to see a lot of people who are going to be coming out on top. These are the times that make you and break you. So you want to be, if you're prepared like you're supposed to, you should be able to come out on top. It's really basically, especially if you're a believer and you're operating out of God's gift that He gave you, and the gift of knowledge, because it's all about discipline. It is all about discipline. People who thinking that they can do whatever they want to, they want to party, they think they still got time. You're gonna start seeing it. You're like, well, why can't I do this? Why? I was looking at that now. I was like, dang, why can't I go back and party? And then I looked at it. I was like, that I didn't even feel fulfilled then. It just felt like something to do. And at least now my life has more purpose. And I'm really grateful because I understand that it's a higher calling to my life. It's higher things than just, pleasing the flesh, or just going out to have a good time for one moment. Yeah, they'll give you pleasure for one moment and you're spending and things like that. But then when you wake up, you're going to end up with an empty bank account, nobody around you. Or if you're around people, now you got to provide for these people, and you just wasting money when you could have been doing something else to make yourself better. So, um, excuse me. Yeah. So you guys prepare. Definitely prepare. If you don't get anything else from this video, please start preparing. Everyone can't get a homestead. Everyone can't live, far away from people, but you can stock up on some canned goods. Even if you're homeless, some of the people that I work with that are homeless, they are even making provisions. And let me tell y'all this. This is how God started showing me things. As I started serving the homeless, because I was like, these are the people that are supposed to be underprivileged, and they're going through the most hardships during this time, because people forget when you're going through something, it's kind of hard to look at somebody else's hardships and things like that, unless you're just anointed to do it, anointed and gifted to do it. Or have been trained in other aspects of life, and life has taught you things to train and to understand it, the dynamic. But during this time, there were people who didn't have, like, when they were talking about the mask and stuff, and they're like, God covered me. And I'm telling you, every single homeless person that I have had that has been tested has not had it. And now listen, every single one of them that I have talked about God, how God covered them, and they've been homeless so many years that they have been okay. Then God has protected them then, and they protected them now. How they literally have been saved during this time. They didn't even have the resources. I'm giving them mass, and they're like, if I have it, good. But if I don't, I got the true protection, and how they were being protected and how they were being saved. But also, they didn't go by just saying that God is going to protect them and be like, okay, whatever. They also started preparing. I like one thing they were telling me about was spam, and they were talking about how when they live on the street and how spam, say for instance, they are tired or something and they have to open up the can of spam and they're trying to make it last. And they like how long spam can last unopened, the can open, because it has so much sodium. Um, so they would stock up and they only had cents to go buy, they had $5. Would they go and buy the fast food meal or buy the spam that's going to last them longer durations of time? Even though it's a lot of food and things around them, they will buy that spam. um I also noticed how they prepare during the winter months, things like that. How they stuffed cardboard and things like that. And you're like, okay, well, we gave you guys blankets, we gave you guys tents. And they were like, well, this is really, it was a lot of things that they just showed me that they gave me a lot of aha and knowledge like God provides, but he also gives us knowledge. This is how he provides. He provides for giving you a word, for showing you things, giving you knowledge, and giving you faith to believe, but also giving you words of encouragement and giving you knowledge. He'll put you around some people who know how to do something, and at different aspects. God put me around those people and they helped me and they showed me a lot of things. Going through homelessness myself, I saw some things that you overlook that will help you in certain times of difficulty and uncertainty. One thing that I noticed, and I literally had to think of this myself, is that it is illegal to sleep in a car. People don't understand it. It really is illegal to sleep in a car, and it's dealing that rule and that law is dealing basically on money. Because if you lived in your car, you really had a plan, you can kind of make some stuff happen. But people don't look at it that way. That's how I started my own business. But even though you can't sleep in the car, there are other ways that a car can protect you, as far as sleeping in and things like that. There's ways around it, as I can say, ways around it. So yeah. Basically, get prepared, y'all. Get prepared. Anything that you think that you can do, it might look different. It might look unorthodox. It might look different from the norm. Whatever you think that can help you, um, uh, protecting yourself. That's a good thing. Listen. Protecting yourself, guarding your research, because they're going to be. When I say, listen, uh, didn't it say how the wicked persecutive and the powerful man, take it by force. I can't even remember what that scripture is, so maybe I don't need to quote it. But during these times, in these difficult times, people who don't have anything will go after the people who have. Think about it in school. The bullies usually go after the nerds, especially if they think they're outshining them. They have issues at home. People are talking down to them, and they see a kid who's happy about themselves, content, and they like to go to school and do things. Usually, those bullies try to go after the nerds. They try to go after someone who they feel is weaker, who they something that they want, and they try to take their courage, their confidence. It could be their lunch food, their lunch money. They're always coming to take something that they want or they think that they need, that they don't have. That's the same thing that's going to happen. So just prepare. I'm gonna get off of here, and oh yeah, also with my mom is still in the hospital. She's doing a lot better, which I'm grateful for. But I ask that you guys send prayers so that she can be finally delivered home and be in her right mind. So yeah. Hopefully something I said or done will help you on your journey. Please stay tuned to Journey to Jerusalem, and thank you guys so very much. Bye.